We just watched many offseason trades unfold before our eyes, so I thought it would be interesting to look back at the 10 biggest trades of the 2024 season and rank them based on how successful or terrible they were. The worst move last year comes to us at 10, and it is the Bradley Beal trade. My feelings as a Suns fan are without a doubt factoring into the placement of this, but if we are being honest, many NBA fans would say this trade is horrible. The Phoenix Suns gave up basically every last trade asset they had, plus Chris Paul and smaller value players, in exchange for really just Bradley Beal. The fit of Bradley Beal next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant was questionable in many eyes, as there was no doubt he wasn't a great complement to either of the players, but what we saw this season was way worse than anyone could have imagined. There are definitely underlying issues to why Beal on the Suns was horrible last year, but one thing we cannot do is act oblivious about how the Suns will always be the loser of this trade. Given the money owed to Beal, the inability for him to complement the team, the deficiencies he causes on the team, and of course the fact the future was sacrificed in order to get him, and this is by far the worst big move of the 2024 season. As a massive supporter of this next trade, I do have to say I was very wrong about it, and looking back on it, this trade was not great. This trade piggybacks right off the Bradley Beal trade, as it was the Chris Paul to the Warriors deal. In simple words, everything I thought Chris Paul would help the Warriors with did not have as big of an impact as I thought it would, and Chris Paul at this point in his career was not at all a compliment for the Warriors team, and he has a contradicting playstyle to many key players, making the fit wonky to begin with. The only positive about this deal for the Warriors is that they were able to waive Chris Paul after one season, despite his massive contract, but they also got a subpar package for Jordan Poole, who was more valued to the league at the time, no matter how you feel about him. On the Wizards side of things, they are rebuilding, but Jordan Poole is clearly a toxic player to have around your young players, as he can stunt their development, making it a lose-lose deal in the grand scheme of things, ultimately leading me to place it at 9 on my list. It is no secret at all that I am not a James Harden fan, and when the news broke that he was being traded to the Clippers, I despised the deal for the Clippers. Harden and the Clippers would then go on a brutal stretch as soon as he got there, but after that, they went on a stretch where they looked amazing, and at points it seemed like the Clippers were unstoppable. If you watched the regular season only, you could easily say this deal was great, but the postseason of James Harden was yet another disaster class, as he did not show up and played a huge role in why the Clippers went home in round one. This deal was made by the Clippers to maximize their roster, but in reality, nothing about it changed, and now the Clippers don't even have Paul George, and the consensus around this team is that their window of success has officially closed, and you can't even argue against that, making this trade a very bad trade, and that is why it comes to us at 8. When a team goes out and acquires depth to win a championship, normally it pays dividends, but in the case of the New York Knicks, trading for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks at last year's deadline did not. This trade was by no means a bad one, but looking back at it, it just seems like an unnecessary trade, as neither of the players the Knicks got are still with the team, nor did they have the contributions expected. Alec Burks did perform in the playoffs, and Bojan Bogdanovic did have his moments, but at the end of the day, neither of them really had a role on the team until the Knicks players started dropping like flies, so by the time they did end up playing, it was out of necessity, as they really did struggle when they first came to New York. They didn't give up much, but they didn't get anything at all really, making it just a trade that happened for really no reason. As brutal as this next trade was in many ways, Damian Lillard heading to Milwaukee was not worse than the moves behind it. It is no secret that the Bucks underachieved last season, nor is it a secret that Damian Lillard was not the same player he was in Portland. But to say the Bucks still didn't have a chance to make it to the conference finals or even win a playoff series is just utterly wrong. Damian Lillard and Giannis were both hurt in the playoffs and never got to showcase themselves as a duo on the big stage. The team had horrible moments all year, yet still finished as a 3 seed in a competitive Eastern Conference. Although Dame and Giannis didn't turn out to be the duo we expected, they were still scary when healthy. The perception that this trade was so dreadful is the loss of Drew Holiday, as the defense was brutal and the Celtics ended up getting Holiday. If we want to look at it deeper, though, the Bucks won more games in the playoffs last year than they did the year prior with Drew, so as much as we want to criticize the deal, because believe me, I still do not love it, We cannot forget to comprehend the fact that the Bucks had to make the move, or else they would have been stuck with an outdated roster that could not create consistent offense and even struggled defensively in the playoffs. Not a good trade a year later, but it is not as bad as the media portrays it to be. With a respectable argument to be higher, I have the Kristaps Porzingis deal that sent him to Boston at 5. The move would be higher, but the Celtics ran through the Eastern Conference playoffs with him being injured, and although he was the difference maker in the finals, the team was good enough to win even without him. Still a massive move, and the 5th best move of 2024 without a doubt though in my mind. Just a little higher than the Porzingis deal, I have the deal that sent OG Anunoby to the Knicks. At the time the Knicks got OG, they were a horrible defensive team, but after adding him, that completely changed. The success the Knicks had with OG last year was unreal, as they ended up finishing 2nd in the East, but I did have concerns about it originally, as I wasn't certain that the Knicks would be able to retain him. With the agreement of a contract this offseason, my only concern was addressed, and seeing how OG played in New York last season, there is no doubt the Knicks are serious title contenders. However, there is a problem with OG's health, and we saw that last year in the playoffs and regular season, which is why I can only put this move at 4. At 3, we merged 2 deals into one, and I think it is pretty fair to do so, as the Mavericks pulled 2 finesse jobs in one trade deadline, as they got both PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford for virtually nothing. The Mavericks were struggling before the deadline, and it was a real possibility that they could miss the playoffs for a second consecutive year in the Kyrie and Luka era. Instead of taking the approach of adding a 3rd star like many teams do, the Mavericks centered their focuses on adding perfect role players to fit their needs as a team. As a result, the Mavericks fleeced the Hornets for PJ Washington, who ended up developing on the defensive side, as well as flourishing on offense next to the Mavs star duo, and they fleeced the Wizards for high-energy big Daniel Gafford, whose shot-blocking ability and overall work ethic made for a perfect match on both ends of the court. Both of these trades worked out perfectly, and ultimately were a huge reason why the Mavericks ended up making the NBA Finals last year. Both players are also still under contract for the next 2 seasons, allowing them to keep their starting 5 intact, keeping their championship window open for the foreseeable future. Just missing out on the top spot, we have the Pascal Siakam trade that occurred at the deadline last year, as the Pacers didn't only just land him and his expiring contract, but they were able to do it without expending their key player assets, as well as extending Siakam on a long-term contract. The Pacers were a surprise team last year, but there was a clear concern about how good they actually were and if they were good enough to be successful. The team hit a rut and decided to go all in and acquire Siakam, but it wasn't until the playoffs that we were certain that Siakam was the perfect player the Pacers needed. During the conference finals run, Siakam played a massive role as his production was near a legitimate one options, and he complemented everything the Pacers tried to do and then some. Looking back on the deal, it only gets better as the Pacers solidified themselves as a true threat in the East for many years to come, and that is why this is, without a doubt, the second best move of 2024. The one spot had to go to the reigning champions, as the Jrue Holiday trade they made right before last season started was the thing that really put them over the top. Sure, the Porzingis trade was great as well, but as I said earlier, he was hurt in the playoffs, and ultimately, it was Jrue Holiday's impact on the team that was able to give them the edge over everyone else. I had many doubts about the Celtics even after the Porzingis trade, but once Jrue Holiday was acquired, it was clear that the Celtics were set up to win an NBA championship, and that is exactly what they did. Not only did they get Jrue, but they were able to extend him, and now there seems to be a clear consensus that the Celtics are the favorites to come out the East again with little resistance, rightfully so. That is why this trade was the best trade of 2024. I hope you all enjoyed. Obviously, the thing that sparked this video was the Karl-Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks trade, so if you want to watch my take on it, click on the video on the screen. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy, because it does help out a lot. Y'all stay safe. Have a good one. Bye.